Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer. I'm with A Glass of Art and More. I'm an art teacher at Milton High School, and I like to do these workshops for people, and on the weekends or when we're quarantined and stuff, I like to do some free ones for y'all. We do offer workshops of all types. We started with glass painting back in 2009 and worked our way into canvas and crafts and wood signs and all that kind of fun stuff. We're also doing things with clay and cement and wood burning, so a little bit of everything here. To start with today, I have a 8x10 canvas just because that's what I had convenient for me. I was going to do it on a scrap of wood, but then I burned all my wood earlier this year. So it's on an 8x10 canvas here. I'm going to start by showing you how to draw the owl on your canvas. If you want to skip that part and just start painting with me, I'll be doing the background first and working my way to the foreground of the owl. And then, of course, some of you may have noticed, we have a bonus painting today, which is going to be a large gnome face and nose with his hat on, or you could call him an elf if you wanted to. Just kind of on the Christmas theme here, because we're in December. And that I actually have on a 12x12 canvas. You can do it at any size that you want. You can use whatever materials that you have around. I primarily stick with your primary colors. But I know during March, April, May, it was hard to find those colors in the store, so whatever you could grab is fine. Definitely want white, black, red, blue, brown if you can, those kind of colors, your basic colors. But if you can't, you grab whatever greens you like for this image, or you can mix your own. Alright, so to start with the shape of our owl here, I started with his face. So basically you're making a large oval right through here. Alright. It's got a little bit of a chin, so it looks like his cheeks come down here. So I just kind of took that oval and then I made it look kind of like a kidney bean shape here. Alright. I'm going to actually trace it with a marker. I don't recommend doing this if you want to not have it outlined, because marker does not cover up with paint very well. But I want you to be able to see what I'm talking about here. Alright, so starting with that shape of the owl, kind of kidney bean shape. There's his head. I'm going to stop where his hat's going to be. It would continue right there if you're doing with a pencil. Alright. I put his nose in here, which is kind of like an upside down teardrop. And then I have two ginormous circles for his eyes. Kind of come in contact with the nose. Try to get him about the same size. He's going to stop here where his hat comes. But if you want to draw them in and erase them, you can. Just two big circles. Alright. Next, I drew his hat in there. So I'm going to start over here, kind of above his eye. Round that corner off a little, like it's going, his hat is falling on his head. Kind of like an L shape there. A wonky L. It's not very straight, but there you go. Bring that down over and around to the side of his head and connect it to his face, and then finish that hat off the other side over here. Okay, the top of his hat, we're going to go just a slight bit in from the left side of his hat here, the rim, the brim, and just kind of go at an angle. And stop about an inch from your edge, and then bring that down. It can be straight or it can be curvy. You want to kind of curve it in towards the bottom here though. This is that little stocking part. And the big ball down here for his little ball of his hat. So this will be white, his brim. You can paint it any color you want. I'm just telling you what I'm going to be painting it. His hat will be red. The ball will be white, like a big cotton ball. And then we have his belly in here. Okay. His feet. His feet kind of line up with his one eye, and this one is like lined up with his nose. Alright, so starting with his body on the side of where his eye is. It's not right out to the side of his head. His head is a little bit larger than his body. Just going to do like a big parenthesis and stop. I'm going to do the same on the other side about where his eye is. Come down. It's right next to that ball. If it doesn't line up for you, don't worry about it too much. Nothing has to be exact. I can't do the same thing twice. I don't expect you guys to be able to follow along exactly either. It's your painting. You have fun with it. I'm going to do his wing over here. Kind of comes down a little bit and then around. A little point there. This guy is over here. We have both of his wings. I'm not going to bother to draw in the paint strokes here for his feet. I'm just going to go ahead and put his toes in around the branch. Okay, so again, about in line with his pupil. I didn't draw his pupil in there, but it's, you know, in the center of his big eyeball here. Go ahead and try to draw that in for you so you can see it better. Alright, those are those little white highlights right there. So coming down in line with that, you're going to have his middle toe. It's just a big oval. Skinny, elongated oval. And then the other one's next to it, and then on the other side. And then go over slightly, kind of on the other side of his nose. Go ahead and put those ovals in. Alright. Like I said, if you don't want to draw with me and you want to just jump right into the painting, you can go ahead and jump into the painting. Some people like to have it sketched out, some people don't. I will start with the background colors and go from there. So my branch is just wonky. Starts up a little bit by his left side over here by his arm, about a third of the way up his arm, his wing. And then it just kind of goes down around the canvas. Really kind of crooked and gnarly. And then I put a big holly berry there at the end. We have some holly berries down here. So circles. I had a holly leaf kind of right here. I have another holly leaf over here. Those are basically just curved lines, like a parenthesis again. Remember, when I paint, I like to paint the edges of my canvas as well, so this will kind of go off the side and it will be part of the holly, just like the bottom down here. Alright, and then we have him kind of got this mountain of snow behind him. Maybe it's a part of the tree in the hole or something, I don't know. And then these little circles that I have kind of drawn on here. I don't know if you can see them. Those are just the dots we'll put in later, like snowflakes coming down. I'm going to finish his other eye. And I might tweak this a little as I'm painting. So if you don't get it perfect, you don't have to erase it 100,000 times. Your paint will cover your pencil marks. Like I said, it won't cover a Sharpie. I'm only doing in Sharpie so that you can see it. If you like the way it looks in Sharpie at the end, by all means, grab one and outline it. Okay, so starting with my blue and my black to get that nice dark blue in the background. If you have a navy blue or a darker blue you want to use, go for it. Use that color. If you have like a royal violet or a cobalt hue, a bright blue, any of those will work. Obviously violet's going to give you more of a purple sky. This is going to be the cobalt hue. And just get the inexpensive paints from Walmart. You can get them from any craft store. They might be a different brand. You can buy them online. I find them to be a bit more expensive when you order things online. The 2-ounce bottles at Walmart are 50 cents from this Apple Barn, or Apple Barrel, I guess it is. It's $2.50 for the 8-ounce bottles. If you're going to do a lot of painting, you can get a bigger bottle. But just grab what you can. All right, come back in here. So I actually put a little bit of both the blues that I have on my plate. I have the cobalt hue and the bright blue. And then I have a black. There's no label to it, sorry. I get it from school. We don't use these liquid ones at school, so I just grabbed a bottle to bring home. Now, anytime you're going to be adding black, you add just a very little bit and get darker from there. So here's my plate. I've got my blues. I'm just going to kind of mix those guys up. Just kind of give it a different look. I don't care if it's 100% mixed. And then I'm going to slowly start grabbing that black and adding it until I get to the color that I like. See, you notice how fast that went dark there? Bring those paints back in. I can leave it kind of swirly like this if I want to. Then the background is going to be kind of, you know, mystical, we'll call it. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to start with my edge and paint that. Now your paint will dry darker. You might want to put more than one coat of paint. Sorry, this is really close to the camera. Just trying to get the edges. The lighter colors of paint usually don't cover very well because it's a less expensive paint. It has a lot more medium in it. Medium is just a liquefied clear, basically, that will thin out thicker paint. If anyone's ever done any of the paint pouring, you might find that you use that kind of a medium in that just to liquefy those paints more. Alright, so now my edges are painted down to where the next color is going to run into, so I can go ahead and do this guy. I'm just going to go around. If I overlap the marks here, that's okay. Like I said, they won't cover up. What's great about doing live videos is you guys can watch it with me. If you want to paint with me, you can, but you can always go to my video section after the fact and paint it at your own speed. I've been painting for years. I'm 44 now. I've been, you know, doing this for a long time, being an art teacher, so I enjoy switching my mediums up. So I can paint usually a lot faster than most people. There are people who paint much faster than I do, so I'm not fast by any means, but for these little basic images, I'll just have some fun with it. If you have a hair dryer handy, that will come in great to dry your canvas a little bit faster. If you're impatient and want to kind of get it done a little faster, you can do that. You could paint one coat, come back and paint another coat of it after you do a different color. But remember, if you mixed your paints, it's hard to mix the same color more than once and to get it exactly the same. So you'll have to consider that, either getting it straight from the bottle where you don't have to mix colors, or use a hair dryer or a fan or something to kind of dry that up a little bit so you can do a second coat before the paint on your palette dries up. As far as palettes go, a lot of times we use styrofoam plates at my workshops because they're inexpensive. I can get a lot of them. We can throw them away when we're done. They come in great for fanning. You know, when we don't have hair dryers for everyone, we take an extra plate and we just kind of fan it. Get our chicken flaps going there, you know, a little exercise. And now, as far as brush strokes go, some people like seeing their brush strokes in their paintings, some people don't, so it's a personal preference. You can just use your brush back and forth. You can do X marks, you can kind of pounce it a little bit. It's going to give you different textures depending on what you want to do. Play around with it while the paint is still wet. Let's see. Oh, hi Ruth from Puerto Rico. Michelle, do I have a preview of the bonus gnome? I believe it is in the event, on the event page. I had a picture of it, as well as on my Instagram page. And Vicky, you're painting hers tomorrow. That's awesome. Vicky's really good at doing owls. We've done owls in the past, over the springtime, like I said, when we were all quarantined. So basically it's the same shape. It's the same kind of owl. I have a handy purple paint cup, as I call it, next to me. So I'm just rinsing out my paintbrush now. Acrylic paints can stain your clothes, so make sure that you're covered or you're wearing something that you don't care if you get messy, or just, you know, don't go crazy with your paints. I have just a rag here I can dry my brush off of. You can use paper towel as well. Oh, there goes my brush. I just broke it, but that's okay. Just push that right back on. See? I mean, it happens. It comes off. Just push it back on. So that's fun. Let's see what else we have here. The next step, like I said, I would dry mine before I do another coat, but because I don't want a hairdryer blowing on you guys and have to listen to it like on my last video, I'm just going to move on to the next section of my painting. And again, because I'm still doing the background, I'm going to go ahead and do the white there. So I'm just grabbing my white paint. Just white acrylic paint. You can use tempera. Tempera does wash out. It doesn't last as long. The temperas that we have here in the United States, it's not like the temperas of the old days. They still work. It's a decent paint to use. It's something that we art teachers use for like elementary students, beginning painters. There's much nicer paints out there, but you know, grab what you can. I know this you really can't see because it's white on white, so you have to kind of pay attention to where your brush strokes are going. And then we'll add a little bit of the blue or a purple or something into it to kind of give it a little bit of a shadow. So again, I'm going here on the side. I still have a little blue in my brush apparently. I didn't wipe it out very good. I'll drag some of that blue down from, it's still wet, the side there, and bring it down into my owl here. Like there's a shadow around him. Now, that was magic, right? I mean, probably couldn't do that again if I wanted to. But I basically, just the very edge corner of my brush there, grabbed a little of that blue, and so I just followed the line down, and that's where I got my shadow from. So, come here on this side, and fill this side in. Now, if you were just painting this in the background, and you're not worried about drawing the image on there first, you could do the whole, you know, corner section up here in a dark blue, and then this whole area down here in a white, and then keep painting in the layers on top of it. The more you layer it up with colors, the richer your painting looks. So that's always a nice thing. It'll last you a lot longer too if you put more than one coat on. Typically for my workshops, we do these things in an hour or 2 hours, so we don't have the luxury of all that time, but at home you guys can do whatever you like. Sorry, my phone, I bumped it there. Going back into my white, continue to go around my branch here, my berries. Go underneath his toes, or paint over his toes in my case, because you can still see the black lines through it. White is typically your save-all. It's titanium white is a heavy paint, so it usually will cover up anything. But like I said, Sharpie marker does not get covered up by paint, so I wouldn't recommend using it unless you want it outlined. I'm doing the edge down here on this piece because remember, I like to have all of my things painted. To me, it looks more finished. Some people will paint their edges black. I prefer to leave them whatever color I was painting with, so it just looks like it was a painting wrapped around, instead of just kind of painted on top. I want the canvas to look like it was completely wrapped around the wooden frame. Alright, this is my branch. I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to throw a little bit of white there on his arm. We got a little bit of background back here, so I'm going to have to switch to a smaller brush, the navy. I'm just going to use one of the detail brushes. If you got one of the packs of multi-brushes that I had posted about, you'll have some round brushes and some flat brushes both in there, and they have a number on the paint brushes somewhere through here. Mine's always covered with paint, and so just grab one of the smaller ones for your details so you can get in those little areas if you're painting around an image like I am. Those are two little triangles there. Or we can adjust the shape of the hat too if we want to. That's another fun thing with paint. You can kind of change it. You don't have to go with the mark that's there. The mark that's there is strictly a guide for you. Okay. Alright, going on next. I mean, the background, the next piece of the background, I guess, would be his branch. And then the little owl himself. So, I'm going to grab one of my brushes again. We've got a smaller type brush. I'm going to go with this guy. It's, again, covered right where the paint, the number is on it. Maybe it's a 2. It's a square brush. Alright, make sure my bristles aren't stiff and hard. I'm going to go in with some brown. Oh, I forgot to grab my brown. Good thing my paints are all right next to me. Alright, so this is just nutmeg. Whatever brown you find is fine. I like the darker ones more than the light nutmeg one here because it doesn't cover well, but I don't have any right now, so I'll use what I've got. Alright, this will not cover very well, like I said, so you might need 2 coats, or you could add a little white to it to give it a highlight. We're just going to put the first coat down, get those base layers of our colors down. We can add the highlights and the shadows later, or I typically like to do everything in one stroke. That's why our workshops go a little quicker. It's the wet and wet technique. While your paint's still wet, you can put that other color in there. Give it that nice shadow towards the bottom, and then your highlight or the snow you could have on the top of the branch here. Now, another thing to think about with the colors, whatever you're painting with, you can bring them back into the painting by mixing your colors together slightly. I wouldn't go overboard. I'm going to do my branch off here to the side. Remember, I like to make it look like the painting continued. So just finish that up. There's that branch. I'm going to dip into the black just with the corner, because remember, the black goes dark fast, and mix that into my brown. I had about the size of a pea on here. It wasn't a lot at all. Get that mixed up, and I'm going to go ahead and paint it on the bottom half of my branch. My paint is still wet, like I said. It's going to be able to blend a little bit easier this way. You might decide you want to put a second coat of that original brown on before you do this. And then you could go in a little bit with your white and that light color. Lighten it up a little. That would be the highlight. So there's the original brown, there's the darker brown, here's the highlight brown. Go ahead and paint off the side here. And bring that color through. Dipping right back into my regular brown, putting a little there. I like the blue that kind of got into it when I was painting this edge out here, so I might actually put a little blue in here later for a darker shadow as well. I'll let that dry because otherwise it's just going to keep moving the paint around on my canvas. It's not going to cover it. It's not going to get any thicker. So I will go over it again to finish it off. His toes are kind of a brown too. They kind of have a little bit of tint of the green in it. So you could use like a little bit of yellow. And with your paint if you want, you could paint your toes in here if you wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and start with his body and his face. So it's kind of got an undertone in the original image of a darker green. So I'm just going to take my straight up, I think it's Christmas green, there you go, and I'm going to use that and paint the whole shape of his body and around, not his eyes yet, but around his face there. Not with that one, it's not open yet. Let me grab another one. This one's open. Alright. So I'm just going to squirt some of that on my plate here. I typically like to use plastic lids from containers for my palettes so that I can reduce, reuse, recycle. So this is from a pretzel container here at Aldi's. You could use that as a palette. You can go out and buy a fancy palette. The dollar stores even sell a pack of 6 with the small little circles on them. You can do those. I like to have something that I can mix my paint on if I want to. I typically mix my paint on the canvas, but alright, just putting the bright, fun green down. Now, if you don't want a green owl, by all means, change the color of them. This is just kind of reminds me of that Grinch. So he's like this cute, innocent owl, but yet he's green like the Grinch, so I thought that was kind of cute with his red, very Christmassy with the red hat and the green kind of body, so. You know, because the Grinch never changed his color, but he did have a bigger heart by the end of the movie. Alright, now here I'm still using my same flat brush. I could have switched to a bigger one so it covers it quicker. And I could actually put a little bit of darker color in here. I could grab some of that darker blue and kind of do an outline underneath his chin. And then I pull my strokes down towards the bottom of the canvas in the direction that his feathers would be falling. I guess it's not hair, but I'm not making anything super realistic. He's cutesy, he's cartoony. I know owls don't wear hats. Go figure, right? But it's just fun. Just have some fun with it. And as Bob Ross says, there's no mistakes, just happy accidents. So if you go over something, just correct it, fix it, try again, wait for the paint to dry, and do again. Alright, so just long little strokes there coming down towards his feet, filling up the body. It doesn't have to be perfectly covered because we're going to be putting another layer on. This is just the base layer. Alright, kind of finish him off like so. Now his face, this is a lot lighter, but he has some like darker underneath his hat here is the shadow, so I'm going to put some in there. I'm not going to do too much. I'm not going to completely fill them in, I guess. Because, I mean, you don't have to. You can. And then down here around his nose and around his eye. Yeah, I'll fill them in. We'll fill them all the way in. Why not? Why not? This is going to come out here to the side. Alright. Like I said, he's not going to be completely filled in. His a little bit lighter there. I'm just pushing the paint out of my brush, whatever's left in there. Now his eyes are green. They're a bit darker, kind of like the shadow on his body, so if you wanted to dip into the black, you could. I would recommend grabbing a smaller brush to work around his eyes. But mixing just a little black with that green, and you get this nice kind of hunter green color. If you bought a hunter's green, use it. Use what you got. Alright, and paint this dark circle around here. And this one around here. Now that my paint is still wet on my owl, I can go ahead and give him a little bit more shadow if I want. And I can throw a little bit of that darker color up in here. Kind of come around his arm if I wanted to. Kind of come underneath here if I wanted to darken it up a bit. Because, you know, it's not super holiday green, but you can just kind of clean out your brush. That's what I say. Just clean it out, clean it out. Crazy strokes. Do whatever you want. Use up all that paint. Sorry if my hand's in the way there. Alright. So as I posted, I'm pretty sure I broke my thumb about a month ago. And doesn't like to bend 100% yet. But I figured, hey, was it something to get an x-ray? They can't really do much. I do have a brace for it, but I just got it yesterday, so haven't been wearing it too much. The holly leaves down here are green too, so if you wanted to clean off your brush and kind of put those green colors in, they don't have to be perfect. You can just kind of place them in there. You'll be fixing that up later. But again, gotta get my edge. See where that holly is gonna go. Gonna come out here. Whenever you start with white to make a tint, you add the darker color to it slowly. So whatever the lighter color is, in this case the green, we add the black to it slowly. Otherwise we would be adding green and green and green and green if we started with the black. So just finishing off my holly berry down there. Alright. I'm just going to call that it for right now. Clean out my brush. I'm going to start working a little bit more forward again. This is still wet. I don't really want to put any color on him yet, so I'm going to do the red in his hat. Now the red is like a deeper red, so you can put a brown in with your red and kind of give it like that warm red color. You could put black into it if you wanted to darken it up that way. Try them both on your palette first. So I'm just going to squeeze my bright red on the plate, and I'm going to grab one of my brushes here. Probably a square one. Yep, sure is. That's what I typically use. Alright, so I could grab this and put it in there and see what that's going to look like. Of course, I would need a lot more. But just so I can kind of get an idea of what that color will look like if I add a little bit of the brown to the red. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I want to add some blue to it? It's going to kind of make it purpley, but it could be kind of a fun red that you want to play with. Otherwise, I'll rinse out my brush real quick. I could grab a little bit of that black and mix that in over here. And then we've got that kind of red. So this is just a little bit, you know, I guess on the warmer side people call it. I don't know. I struggle with colors, so I just call it red. Dark red, light red. I know it when I see it. Alright. Remember, paint does dry darker. I don't know if I said that already or not, so if you're not sure, you can start a little bit lighter and work your way into a darker color. Alright, I want it a little bit darker around the edges here, so I think I'm going to grab a little bit of that navy blue that I still have and add that into my paint color that I mixed. And just try to bring that in. Now again, I'm going to have to do more than one coat because with this paint, because it is on the thinner side, it doesn't always cover nicely. Especially with some of these lighter colors, red, yellow, they just don't cover very well. Coming back in with my straight bright red, fill that in. Just kind of fill it in. My blue is still a little bit on the wet side right there on the edge, so that's fun. I can grab a little of that with my paintbrush and put that in there. Now again, if you want to right now, would be a good time to use your hair dryer if you have one. Dry it off. A fan, a heat gun. If you're using a heat gun, keep it far away and go move it fast. But if your paint is really thick and you use a hair dryer or a heat gun, you can actually crack the paint. So make sure you're constantly moving it back and forth over your painting and you don't have it too close. If you hold it in one spot, you'll actually crack your painting. Alright, I'm going to throw in some of the dark color of his pupil. I'm not going to worry about those highlights that I drew in there because I'll just put them in with the back of my paintbrush. They make perfect little circles for you. If you have the different size paintbrushes, you'll notice the larger paintbrushes, the bigger bristles, will have a fatter handle. So it'll make a bigger dot. And then you get some of the finer ones have a smaller handle. So you can get a smaller dot. Ooh, can't bend my thumb that way, it doesn't work. I haven't looked at comments in a while. Hi Julie. Michelle. I use old party plates. Yep. It works great. Anything you have laying around your house. Oh, wonky pupil here. Alright, so you want to try to keep your pupils about the same size. Unless your owl is stoned. And maybe he's got one, or he's having a stroke or something. He'd have one pupil blown. That would not be a good thing. Poor owl. I was going to grab a drink, but I don't have my water out here, so I guess I won't. His nose is kind of the same color as his toes, which would be like a lighter brown. You could use some orange in there, kind of give it a little bit of an orange brown, chestnutty kind of brown to it. I mean, hey, it's called nutmeg after all. You could just use it straight if you wanted to. Let me grab my extra paper plate here and dry it here for a little bit. Because I'm kind of at the point where I either have to break out my hair dryer or I'm going to have to wait. So we'll just kind of do this. I want to put another coat, I believe, of the background on there. It should be dry enough, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I still have plenty of paint over here from mixing before. Whenever I grab into it, I always just grab a corner so I don't grab from the center. It doesn't mess up your colors that you had mixed then. Could do the red berries, I suppose. That would have made sense, huh? Oh well. We'll do them later. So that'll be just bright red. My computer screen keeps closing on me. I have it pulled up so I can look at the image I'm painting for you. Alright, so I'm going to use my bigger brush again. I'd say if I was to actually grab a ruler, it's probably a 1/2 inch or 3/8 of an inch. I mean, if you really want to get technical. Line it up there with the 7. Yeah, it's about 3/8. Those of you in another country, if you want to know what it is in centimeters, we can do that, I suppose. It's about just over 1 centimeter. Alright. So going back into those blues that I had mixed up, kind of mixing them up a little bit again just because they do start drying out and get crusty. I don't want a big clunk of clay or acrylic on my painting. And start painting that over again. It'll cover up your brush strokes. It just makes the painting look more finished. You don't want to just give somebody a gift and you only have one coat on there and they can see the canvas through it. The canvas I used is considered prepped. It's gessoed already when I got it, but if you were really going to get into painting and you really wanted to do things the right way and fancy way, you would gesso your paintings. And gesso is just kind of like a really thick acrylic paint, but it has a medium in it that really covers those holes in a canvas and gives you a nice smooth surface to work off of. My co-worker at the high school works with painting all the time, and he has it almost mirror smoothness that he layers up gesso and then he sands it down, and then he layers up gesso and then he sands it down. It's like he's painting on glass when he's ready to prep his canvas, so he takes a lot of care in the canvas that he's preparing to paint on. It makes a lot of sense to start with a good surface. If you're using an old canvas, or if you're using wood or using anything else, just a nice thick house paint, a white house paint would work, you know, to kind of prep it. And that way all your paint doesn't get soaked up into whatever you're painting on as well. If you use wood, your paint will soak into the wood pretty quickly. Any porous material, really. Alright. I'm going to finish right up here in this corner. Another good thing about watching this again later in painting is you can speed up the parts you don't need to hear twice. Just go to that area you stopped at or finished at. We're teaching online. Sorry, I'm turning my painting. We're teaching online with our students right now because of COVID, so people often ask me, how do you teach online with an art class? Well, just kind of like I'm doing right here. You guys have to have the supplies, so they can come to the school and they pick up their supplies. And then I will walk them through it so they can see my surface area. Now, they don't all paint owls. That would be silly. Just teaching them techniques. And then I have them have their cameras pointed at their piece as well, so that I can make corrections for them before they make big mistakes. So like, hey, so-and-so, try doing this because this doesn't look right. Or we do that with the clay projects too. I have about 24 kids right now that have 25 pounds of clay at their house along with their clay tools. And my Art 2 students, they're making journals. That was definitely a fun thing. I had some women come over and do those here with me. a couple weeks ago, I believe. Make some art journals. So a lot of really good YouTube videos out there if you want to learn how to make one. I haven't made one yet, but I haven't made a lot of videos. Not on YouTube, at least. Just cleaning out my brushes and drying them off. Water is okay to have in acrylic paint. You don't want it really wet and soupy because then it's going to crack off eventually. That's why people use the mediums instead of water when they're thinning down their paints. But you can use water. It kind of spreads it a little bit further. I'm going to go back into his red hat again. So I guess this brush still the same one. I'll go with straight red. Try to give it another coat. I used to listen to Pandora when I was painting these videos, and then they kept getting flagged for using people's music without their permission. I'm like, oh, okay, well, it was just in the background. I didn't realize it would show up that much. So if you hear me humming, it's forgive me. Alright, so this side over here I want to be a little bit on the darker side with this hat. So I'm going back in with that darker color I made. And just kind of giving a little bit of a shadow there. And then this top up here as well. If I want to make it a little fatter, I can. If you know, hand gets heavy and you make it a little thicker, not a big deal. I'm going to actually dab into my black a little bit and try to drag that through. Maybe a little bit more there. There we go. Just so it's a little bit darker of a shadow coming through up here. I don't care if it's not a perfectly straight line. I don't care if there's little creases or bumps in it. I mean, it's not like I've ever seen a hat folded exactly like this on anybody's head. Definitely not an owl's, but you know. Maybe there's a tree somewhere full of owls with hats on. Notice here I leave this little line that's lighter. I just kind of had my brush strokes going, and then I skipped a little bit and put them next to it. A little highlight, little shadow. I'm going to put some white on my brush. Just going to make a pink. Just as a heads up, you're going to have kind of a pinky color. Put a little bit of a highlight in there. And we'll put a little one down here too. Because I had the black in there, it's kind of a grayed, muted pink. It's not really bright, vibrant pink. But washed my paintbrush out. Alright, this is going to be the fun part. I'm going to go ahead and put those snowflakes in the background. Even though my paint is still wet. Alright, so I'm using that same brush. It has a nice fat handle to it. I'm going to take that handle, so it's, you know, do it the wrong way, and dip it in there. And then just, bloop, there's one snowflake. There's another snowflake. I'm going to put one half over here. We'll have one in this hat. We'll have another one over here. We'll have one down over here. Make it a little bit bigger. As you dot, 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 they get a little bit smaller. So if you want them bigger, you just have to dip in the paint again. Let those sit there for a little bit. I don't really want to put the highlight on the eye yet because I'm not done with his eye. I don't want to go crazy with any of those kind of things until I'm done with it. Let's go ahead and paint in the white of his brim and the white of the ball, and then we can go on to his nose and his feet. So, size of my canvas, I could stick with that same brush, or I could go to this one, which I believe is about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 centimeter, 3/4 of a centimeter. I don't know how to say that in, you know, I guess I can do millimeters. Yeah, it's about 1/4 inch. Alright, dipping on into my white paint, straight white, just painting it, covering it up, those pencil marks that I had underneath there, and covering up some of the green I got a little crazy with. I have a little bit of black I just touched over here. So that's dragging through, and I kind of like it. Kind of reminds me of those hats that have a little bit of a fur thing to them. So I might cover them up, I might not. And I just dragged a little bit into the red, so now I'm going to have a pink spot, so be careful about that, unless you want the pink spot there. We can call it a pink hat. And drag a little of that color. I'm going to cover that up again, because I don't want it to be too pink. But for now, it's just one coat. Wipe off my paintbrush so it doesn't have all that pink left on it. Go ahead into the white. Do this ball down here. Now notice when I paint circles, I typically leave my paintbrush in the center, and then I move the painter. I just twist the brush in my hand and paint it. That way I can get a more even circle. The amount of pressure that you put down on your brush is going to be how wide the bristles spread out. So if you want fine lines, you have to put a really soft pressure on your canvas. So just be aware of that when we get into some of these details. You really have to have a light hand. I'm going to grab a little more brown. Still that nutmeg color. I'm going to actually grab a little bit of yellow. It's just bright yellow, nothing fancy. I try to get just the straight colors so that people can mix their own if they want. Now remember, your primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. You mix red and yellow, get orange. You mix yellow and blue, you get green. You mix red and blue, you get purple. Purple is probably one of the hardest colors to actually make and actually look good. So I always just buy purple. You can add white to it. So I just very little bit of that yellow into this brown. It's going to help cover a lot easier. And I'm also just going to kind of load my brush. I load it with both colors when I'm putting it on. It's going to blend a little bit nicer here. I'll just kind of fill in his nose. And again, he'll have to have more than one coat, so I'm not going to be too particular with it. And then his toes. Come back in, grab a little bit more of that yellow down here. There we go. Now if you really have thick in your paintbrush and really gob it on, then you can get away with just doing one coat, but it's going to take longer to dry. And you might miss up something and you have to go back through and you'll never have it look the same, so take your time. Make something you're proud of. Alright, back up here. Fill that in a little bit. Toss that off to the side. Alright. I guess we can put the red in the berries since we got that. I didn't do those before. I'll go ahead and put those in. Just going to use bright red for now. You can put the shadows and stuff in later. Just to get color on the canvas so that I don't forget that they're there. Alright, and this one over here on this side. You want to stick more in your painting, stick more in your painting. Alright, so when I go on to his body, I use round brushes. So when I'm doing those strokes, I'm going to switch to a round brush. Again, I can't see the number on this guy anymore. I've used them so many times, and other people use them so many times. They get all covered up. Might be a 1. I don't know. I can't tell. This is probably like a 6 or something, but that one's missing too. It's a fatter brush. And a skinnier one. I always have like 3 or 4 different brushes of different sizes, both in the flat and in the round, just so that if I don't like the way one stroke looks, I just switch to something else. Alright, so I still have my green and my yellow here on my plate, all fancy-dancy. I'm going to go ahead and grab this yellow, put it closer to the green, a little bit of green, and grab that in there. Kind of make a lime green color. If you bought a lime green, awesome, use it. And then the white over here, grab some of that, put that in here as well. Notice I'm mixing it next to it. I'm not mixing the whole thing. That way I can go into both colors and use them over and over and over again. Of course, I'll have to mix them up over and over and over again because I didn't mix a lot. I just kind of wanted to see what color that I wanted there. So I'll end up using both of them. This more yellowy one probably around his eye and for some highlights, and this green one in there, and then I'll probably go in with some white and throw those in there too. So I'm just gonna start at it. Just go. Some nice strokes in here. Wow, he looked really yellow. A lot more yellow than I thought it was gonna, especially up against that green. Dip into the white, lighten it up a bit. I don't wash my brush when I do this kind of thing. I just kind of keep dipping, and whatever's left on my brush will show up. I don't want to cover that dark green 100%. Go in and switch up my greens. I want all those different colors to show through in the painting. So I'm going to just go back and forth between the 3 colors I mix. Sometimes I'll dip straight into the yellow. Sometimes I'll dip straight into the green. The ones that I mixed, and then straight into white. I'll do the white a lot. Around his eyes and his hat here, these are going to be small strokes. So just push down, lift up and as you're flicking. Okay? Don't go crazy with your flicking. You're going to have paint splattered all over there. So it's just going to press down and lift up as you're flicking, and that's going to give you that little stroke like he's got fuzzies going on there. And go around his eye in that direction like you're going around his eye. And then you're going to start coming down around his face and then bringing it down. Alright. I'm going to go back into my green, get some more of the green color in here around his nose, because it's kind of like that shadowy area. See, if I go into his eye, I'm not concerned, because I'm going to finish his eye up again later. So I'm just getting those colors down. Grab some more of that green on my brush, that yellowy color I mixed up. And do this side, some small strokes. His eye seems to be, I think it needs to be a little bit bigger, but it is what it is now. I don't feel like changing it, so bring these strokes around his arms a little bit longer. Come in with my white again. Do some more underneath on this side. Small strokes around his face, larger ones on his belly and his wings. It's almost been an hour. Normally I would be done with this, but I'm trying to go at a little bit slower pace for some of you. And I know it's still probably too fast for some, but I don't know if you've ever watched Bob Ross. When he starts doing something, you're like, wow, that looks really good. And then he does something else. No, Bob, you're going to ruin it. And then he finishes it, and you're like, oh, wow, that's what he did. Yeah, so fear not. If you think you're going to ruin it, just keep going. As Julie likes to say, add more paint. All right, sometimes you can twist your paintbrush and get a little bit more paint towards the tip. I wouldn't necessarily do it on canvas, but I just did, so why not, right? Grab a little bit more of the white. I'm going to start into his legs down here. These are kind of swooshy ones, so this, I can't really see it with the white. Let me grab a little of the green here. So it's going to be like a swoosh. Gotta have the swoosh. You gotta make the swoosh noises, guys, and a swoosh this way. So it's like inverted parentheses. Okay, those are his legs. Toss some white down in here. I'm pulling whatever colors from his feet up, because those are still wet. So that's going to be cool. I always like when the colors start blending like that. I feel like it really makes the painting more cohesive. I'm going to finish this down here with his green. My lighter colors. I don't really want so much yellow, but I keep getting it. I put in too much when I went, so I'm just trying to cover up those marker lines. If I put enough paint on, those marker lines will get covered up. Now, he does have some really big, light white with that greeny color in around the outer part of his eye. Use whatever small brush you have. If you don't have a light hand and you can't keep the pressure off your canvas, go with a tiny brush. So like this guy, he's super tiny. This is a detail brush. He's the size 5/0, so he's super tiny. I would take forever to paint with this guy, but I'm going to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to go into the white and then onto a little bit of that green. Alright, and I want to go around his eye on the outside. Once you're happy with the feathers in the background, you're going to do this. So if you're not happy with the feathers yet, don't jump into this. And then outline that guy. But I can't do it with that small one. It's driving me nuts. Alright, I'm going to go back to my this size. I gotta wash them out. Ooh, almost lost my paint. Alright. We'll load my paintbrush up with some white. Dab a little bit into that greenish color, just so it has a little bit of the green hue to it. And then light pressure around, steady hand. If you have something that you trace your circles with, use it again if you can. As long as you wash it off right away, while the paint's still wet, it won't ruin whatever you might have traced around. Unless it's your clothes. But who has clothes that are round? Nobody. I mean, a button, yes, but it's plastic, it'll come off of that. Fabric, not so much. Alright, going back into my white, a little bit of that green for the other eye. Going over his nose slightly. Right up to his hat. Alright, that's not, there we go, let's go over here. Now, his eyeball in there, we've got a little bit of the highlight down underneath here, so underneath in his green, this is like a highlight. So I'm going to put that on there, but then I'm going to go back into that, I don't have any more because it dried, the black and the green that I mixed for his eye in that undertone color. Alright, grab that again. And paint the round. Details there. If it gets a little on the thick side, make it thick side going towards the pupil, because you can always paint the black over the pupil pretty easily. Go into my white, put my white down here because it's still wet, it'll give me that highlight that I want. And then as the white comes off your paintbrush, it's just a very little bit, not a lot, just a touch. Kind of brushing it into that darker green that was up there towards the top. So it kind of fades in a little bit there. The other eyeball, don't worry, I'll make him better here in a minute. Alright, coming down. Grabbing a little bit of that white again. Just down around his eye down here. Still wet, so I'm just going to start brushing back and forth. Try to blend some of that in so it's not a huge white spot down there, but it's a little bit lighter. I'm getting red all over my arm because my canvas is wet over here. My arm keeps running into it. Gonna get red paint all over my painting. My berry was still a bit wet. Okay. Going back into my 1/4 inch flat brush. This guy with the black. Work on that pupil again. Make it a little rounder. I'm really trying to work on getting the roundness of the eye as well as the shape of the other green part. I want it to be equal all the way around. I don't want it to be really fat on this side down here with a lot of green and then really skinny up here, so I'm trying to have the spacing around it pretty even. Do this eye. Now remember, his hat is covering up part of his eye over here, so make your pupil round. Yeah, we don't want him to look like he's, you know, having a stroke. Poor owl. Just kind of filling in the black there, adding some more paint. Alright, I like his head. His head's cute. I want to keep working on his body. I don't like this color that's going on down here yet, so I'm going to grab a little bit bigger brush. Still a round brush, filling it with the white paint. It's got a lot on there. Really kind of got it gapped. Going to go into a little bit of that green, just a touch. And then I'm going to start putting some more strokes in here on this side. Lightening this up a bit. And back into the white. Back into the white. Still have a little bit of green on my brush, so it's not going to be, you know, stark white like the snow, but it's definitely going to be darker than the snow. Now I'm going back into that green color so I can do the outline over here. Since I covered that up. Come over here and toss a couple nice long strokes. I think my paintbrush got a little bit of brown that was on my plate next to it, so we'll see if we get a little brown that comes through. That would be cool. I think I'll do it. I'll dab into the brown a little bit. And bring those, tie those colors together somehow. Whatever you used in your painting. Just sporadically put a little bit somewhere else. It won't look so out of place. Alright, coming back in here to do his feet. Covering up some of those toes. If you needed a second coat of your toe color, you want to do it before you do this if they're going to be overlapping his toes like I have it overlapping. Alright. Nice blob right there. I think we need a little more of a highlight here on his chest. Darker green, kind of just covering up some of that really dark one, lighten it up a little with the lighter green, but not going crazy. Alright. At some point you have to decide, I better stop. You know, at some point your painting is definitely going to be better if you would have said, okay, I'm done. So as you paint more and become more acquainted with your own skills, you're going to have to say, okay, enough is enough, I'm done, and just call it a day. Just finishing up a couple things over here, making these strokes go this way a little. I think I want to brighten up his circles around his eyes now that I brighten up his face, so I'm going to go with that detail brush again. Go into my white. You might need to take some time and clean out your water container. I had a bucket over here, but then I put my computer on it, so I couldn't clean out my paint, but my water. I think what's happening is my marker came through there, and that's why that's what I didn't like. I'm going to have to put his nose back in front of this, but we know where it goes now. You could really putz around this stuff for a long time. So like I said, at some point you just have to call it And say you're done. Oh, I got too much water on my brush still there. Grab a paper towel and clean that up. Now, if you've ever wanted to get into watercolor painting, I have done watercolors before too with people, more private lessons. I've done coffee paintings online. You can find it. It's very similar to a coffee painting because coffee is just water, but brown. So you can pick up a couple tips and tricks if you watch those videos. It's all about layering, and you kind of have to mask off what you want to be left white because there's not really a white watercolor as good as the paper that you have. Alright, come up here, clean off my brush and that. Back into my, I think I need more white. I'm running out of white on my plate. It's kind of all turning green and pink. Just making some little strokes here. I still want a little bit of that color that show up underneath. It's just going to make it look like the hat has texture. You can pounce if you wanted to. The paint will dry flat-ish, so it's not like you're going to leave these, you know, big textures on there if you do it that way. But go ahead and try it, see what it looks like. See if that's what you like. I like doing that when I'm making trees, pouncing. It looks like leaves. You can kind of do swoopy things too if you want, like it's puffy. Sometimes the only way you learn is by practicing and trying something new. Use a tool that you wouldn't normally use to paint with. Cardboard, use that as your paintbrush. Pine needles, use that as your paintbrush. Alright, I want to take my detail brush with that little bit of that sky blue. If I have any left over here, it's getting pretty dried out. I'm going to go around my ball with it. Just an itty tiny bitty line there. And then take my white back through it again. Just so I get a little bit of that shadow. There, it finally grabbed enough of it. And just clean my brush out there. Put some up here. Just to add a little bit of the shadow. Tie those colors together. Alright. Almost done. You still have that area back here that you could do that with as well, like I have over here on this side. You can put some in that way. Over there. Gotta find my paintbrush now. I have them all stuck in here. I can't find the one I was just using. This one. Right off. Here underneath this blue. We got some shadows underneath the tree branch and stuff. It's kind of just very dry, not much paint on there at all. Dry it off. Go ahead and grab my white, load it up, and paint over top of that again. It'll start dragging that very dampness, little blue back into your painting. If it's too blue, go back in with your white again. Wiping off some of that paint. I have too much on my brush right now. It's going to turn all the snow blue. Alrighty. Go back and touch up those areas that you need to around here. We got to add some, a little bit more to his nose. We got to fix our green down here, our red here, and then we're pretty much done once we get the highlight in his eye. So, keep moving on into those things. Let's go with this guy here. I'm going to grab some of that red, dip into that black, make that deeper red over here again. Give this guy another layer of paint. Touch up the hat a little bit. I see some spots I'm not really crazy about. There we go. Rinse out my brush. Corner of it into the black, go into the green over here. I like that darker green for the holly leaves. Give those a second coat. Still had red on my brush. That'll make a nice pretty kind of browny green. Red and green are complementary colors, so it makes a nice muted tone. Alright. A little bit of this. It's got a little bit on, just a little bit of a dry brush. Hinting just every so often. Get that little bit of a shadow back through there. I don't want them too outlined. And I do want some of those darker colors to come back through again. Go back and do another coat on my branch. A little bit of brown in my leaves down here. Gonna toss a little bit into holly on the balls there, the berries, the holly berries. I gotta touch up my blue over here because I got my red in it, so I'm just gonna grab some of that blue again. Just barely any left. It's pretty dry on my plate already. Luckily, it's still there. Alright, taking that same small detail brush, I'm going to go into my white. I'm just going to throw a highlight. Just a quick little swoop on the berries. Alright, you can put some on the leaves if you want to. And put some on the branch, like it's snow or something on there. I'm barely hitting the canvas and kind of bouncing my paintbrush around. Alright, I'm going to use the back of my paintbrush, put in the dots here for the owl. I'm going to use a larger paintbrush handle. Try to do the bigger dots there. There's that. Come back in with this one. Get a lot of the paint off of it and just throw a couple little highlights. Where his toes are there, you can come back in and do some darker brown areas again with his feet. If you need to, highlight any area. Cover something up. You have a boo-boo, fix it. Throw that in there. Go ahead and put a line through here. Get a couple lines up through here. Why not? Why not? Gotta do his nose. Finish his nose here. Put it back in front of his eyeballs. There we go. And do a highlight on his nose. There you have that one, ladies and gents. You can keep putzing with it as long as you want to. You can add more snowflakes. Put some down around somewhere else. So it looks like it's snowing. You can have another part of the branch coming off over here if you want. If you have an area that looks like it needs something more, you can give it something more. You can always put in more branches. That's pretty much the end of this one. If you wanted to do a little shading around there with a dry brush, you could kind of, go around those little dots and make them look like they're glowing. You could put more flecks in there. If you want to take your paintbrush, get a little bit of water in it with white paint, you could pull it back while your paintbrush is facing down, and it will put splatters on to kind of look like misty snow. If you wanted to outline this, I would wait till your paint dries. You could do it with a black marker and outline it. You can sign it with a black marker. I would probably suggest signing it like in the branch here, just under the branch here, or some people sign it on the back or whatever. If you want to sign it, you put your initials on. I always do my first initial and my last name, my maiden name. I don't use my whole name. That's just too much. I'm going to move this guy out of the way. So there you have that one, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You can tweak it as much as you want. And then, moving on to my gnome. Might have to zoom out on my camera because it's a bigger canvas. It's a 12 by 12. This is our bonus painting. Alright. Okay. That's as good as I can get it. My camera's not high enough to get it any further away. So, forgive me for the shadows over here. Alright, so 12 by 12 canvas is what I have. Anything that's square will work. So a 4 by 4 if you have that. You can do it on a tile. You could use alcohol inks if you really wanted to. If you're into that, you could do this image with that pretty easily. This one's pretty simple because it's a larger image. I'm going to be using a larger brush. This is a 1-inch brush. You could use a 2-inch brush like Bob Ross does if you want to. And have at it. So I'm going to make the background black. His hat's red, his beard is white, and his nose is brown. Easy peasy, right? I'm going to toss this plate because I don't need that one anymore. Grab another one over here. Alright, so brown for his nose. If you want it skin color, brown, white, orange, or red and yellow, depending on how dark your skin is that you want it to try to match. Works great. I'll throw some white here. Need quite a bit of white because, you know, the background. I want some black on the background there too. Ooh, I didn't need that much black, but it's there now. And red. That's it. Just those colors. Alright. Now you could make the background blue again. You could make it gray. You could make it whatever. I'm just going to go around his hat here. Again, we're painting the edges. My paint's out of the way here. So, his hat is wonky here, so this is... I'll try to get it here. Start up here and just kind of wiggle your brush a little bit down. About halfway down the canvas. Painting my edge. Like I said, it tends to look more finished in my opinion if you have the edge painted as well. When someone hangs it, they don't have to frame it. If you frame it, then you don't have to paint your edges. I'm going to move it off the canvas here so I can get to that little spot up there. While I have it here, I'm going to paint the other edge. I'll have to move it off the camera again. Okay, there we have it. Alright, so this is center from my canvas. So from that, go over another half, so you're at about 1/4 of an inch, and have your wiggly lines go off the edge of the canvas, so you have this little triangle up here. Okay, that's where his hat is going to be, right through here. Alright, I have this little wiggly, 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 wiggly down to a point. And I'm going to wiggle, 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 wiggle it. Grab a little bit more paint. I want a ball around his hat there, so I have to kind of avoid where I'm going to be putting that ball. I could paint it and then paint over it, but, you know, I'd have to take quite a bit of paint to cover up the black, so try to move it back so you can see that. Finish this edge. This bottom slightly, not the whole thing, because it's going to be grays and for his beard. Here I'm just going to kind of swoop. Because his beard's going to be through here, so kind of cleaning off my brush there. Alright. So I kind of have to think in reverse here of like where my pieces are going to be so I can paint the background. And you could have drawn it in if you want. Just have a nice circle here, a little bit lower than halfway. Kind of starts at the halfway and then it goes down below it for your circle. You don't have to put a circle in there. You don't have to give him a little tassel on the end of his hat if you don't want to. Alright, now I'm going to wipe off my brush, but I'm not going to wash it. Just going to get off most of that black. Okay, it's still there. See, there's still some black in it. Now I'm going to go in the red, gob that on, and start painting that. Alright, so we're like a half moon, crescent moon shape. It's going around his nose. Come down here, go this way. Pull that black up and around his nose and bring that down over here. Everyone loves the gnomes. It wasn't until I was at a craft show that someone told me that apparently swingers will put gnomes in their yard so they know. I just like the traditional meaning of gnomes, which is good luck. So that's what I'm sticking with. Gnomes are typically meant for good luck, and they're just fun. I mean, like I said, it looks like a Christmas elf or something. So because I have the black in my paintbrush still, I'm getting those nice burgundies in here. It's getting kind of rustic looking. I'm not worried about covering up the strokes or making it one solid color. This is going to be a super fast, easy painting to do. You could make a set of 4 of these and put them together on your wall and display them, you know, all with like a little space in between them or whatever. You can make them for the different seasons. Maybe you've got different colors in your house that you want to kind of tie together. It'd be a fun way to put them up on your wall and change your art out every so often. Alright, I gotta go get my canvas edge. Forgive me as I pull it off camera again. Just dipping back into the red so I can finish putting the edge on there. And on the side down here, you see where I missed some black up there, so. Whew, I almost dipped it right into the paint again. Alright. Okay, there's that guy. Now I'm going to throw that brush in to get cleaned. I'm going to grab a 1/2 inch brush. I think it's 1/2 inch. Nah, it's bigger than 1/2 inch. About 3/4. Alright, I'm going to dip into my brown and my white. Make kind of a tan color. Kind of leave it all marbleized like that on my brush, not mixing it 100%. And go ahead and big old oval here for his nose. And just fill that in. Last year we did a really fun, a couple actually, snowmen. But since, you know, snowmen are so last year, and gnomes are the hit thing, that's what we're doing this time. We're doing lots of gnomes. We will be doing some cardinal workshops coming up, so keep an eye out for those. We do still do workshops at a couple locations around the area. Delavan Lake Store and Lounge has us often. And then here at my studio, you can always come out. I do have a heater in my garage, so we are still doing some things here and there. Alright, so I'm going to go just into that plain and brown and go a little bit into that black, just barely, so that I have a little bit of a darker spot up there. Now, again, wait until this dries and it would be easier to cover. Right now I'm just kind of putting really light pressure on my brush. Try to get the paint off my brush and not on my, and onto my canvas. Alright, throw that guy in there. Might have to come in and do him again because I should have done the beard first. I always tell you to do the background first. Find a different paintbrush. I'm going to go with a 1-inch brush again because it's such a big area. So just another one of these 1-inch brushes. I'm going to gob into the white. Throw that down here. Just get some color on it first. Trace around his nose, around his hat. If you have to use a smaller brush, use a smaller brush. Now the background's still wet, so I'm going to be grabbing some of that black as I'm pulling it here. And I'm just having some fun with his brush strokes. The paint off of my brush over here around his nose, down around his hat. Sorry, it's off camera. Let me try that again. Over here around his nose. There we go. Down his hat. I'm not too worried that I grabbed some red and brown. Maybe he comes from Ireland. He's got some red hair. Not that all Irish people have Ireland. Don't, you know, get all mad at me, people. Just what I think of. The Disney cartoons. So, painting my edges. Whoa, got a lot of paint there. About ready to drip. I have my table covered. I am working outside in my studio, so I do have a big, you know, area that I can get messy. You can get a tablecloth or a garbage bag and cover your table underneath your work surface so that if you do get crazy messy like I do, at least you're not getting it all over your dining room table or wherever you're painting. Alright. That's it. That's all you have. If you want to put in some more grays, you can dip a little bit of that brush in. Very little bit on there. And start pulling it down around his nose. You can have some swirly hair in there. It doesn't have to be straight. That just gives a little hint of it. Then I'm going to go back through and do his nose one more time because, like I said, I should have done that after the fact, but I didn't. So I'm going to come back in here and grab more white because his nose got really dark brown. And I want him to be a little bit lighter. Cleaning up those edges. And there you have it. If you want to put in some snow, like I said, you could do that. I'll show you what it looks like with the wet brush and water, white. Grab a brush again that's already clean because my water is like mud. So I'm going to get a cap full of water and my milk jug. Reuse, reuse, recycle, right? Okay. Put a little white in there. Okay. Really on the runny side. It's not really going to show up much color, so I'm going to grab some more white. Just kind of mix it around. Just get my brush coated with that. Okay. Go ahead and put it on my plate so it's mostly watered down white. Now you can use the back of a paintbrush so you don't get your finger dirty, but your hands will wash. Okay, so pointing it down towards your canvas and then pull the bristles upwards. And you will have like a fine mist. Now you could throw some glitter on while your paint is still wet if you want to give it a shimmer. Oh, we forgot the ball over here. Grab some paint, throw that on there. Kind of give him a poofy ball. There. Now he has a ball. Okay, let me show you. Whoop, there it is. Alright. So let me try to zoom in here a little bit. You can see all those little specks on the canvas for his snow. It's glistening. It's such a glistening reindeer, or snow reindeer. Not a reindeer. Gnome. Okay, so if I wanted to put a couple, like I said, larger dots of paint on there for bigger snowflakes, I could. I could paint actual snowflakes on it. I could leave it to be. I could put a holly berry on it. You can do three-dimensional with it. You could actually add pieces to it and make it a three-dimensional piece, like a mixed media piece. And you have things popping off, so you could buy like some bells or a bow or something and put on there as well. You just have fun. That's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching.